Okay, so in this session we will discuss about what is common API, web API gateway and microservice. Okay, so first we will discuss about introduction, then we will go for development. So introduction means why this API solution will be splitted into these three parts. Okay, so see, first of all, what is API gateway? So gateway is a type of service that provides a single point of entry for multiple microservices. So here multiple microservices will be there, and this is the gateway which is called the entry point for all microservices. Okay, and it will provide intermediate layer between the clients and user your microservices. That means whenever client make a request, first of all it will hit the API gateway. From that, according to the endpoint URL API method, specific URL will be called. Okay, specific microservice will be called according to the endpoint URL. And clients send their request to the gateway, which in turn will make sure the request is redirected to the corresponding microservice. Okay, so according to the endpoint URL only, from the API gateway, that microservice will be redirected. Okay, so I will show that in example. First, you need to understand what is the definition and what is microservice. Microservice means it is an application architecture that takes every application function and puts in its own service, which is isolated from the others. Okay, and these microservices are independent each other. Okay, and this Node.js uses modular approach to the application development so that developers use microservices for faster and simpler. Okay, so that developers can update step by step. Okay, so I want to explain this one with example. See, I have one application. Okay, in this application I have used Angular for web, Node for API and MySQL for DB. Okay, so here screens in this web page I have 10 features. You can assume like 10 screens. Okay, and for each and every screen uh, 50 APIs are there. Like you assume like 100 APIs. Okay, so total number of APIs 10 screens, 1000 APIs. Okay, so I considered one project which will have Angular for web development, Node for API, MySQL for DB. Okay, assume like 10 screens or features, okay, whatever it may be. So 10 features are there. Each and every feature will have 100 APIs. So total number of APIs 1000 APIs. Okay, so without this common API, web API gateway and microservice, what are the disadvantages while we follow this approach? Okay, so single API solution. What are the disadvantage? First one, see, whenever I want to change the one API, I want to change the logic in one API, then I need to host the entire all the API's code in the server. Okay, before that, Git we have to push the code in GitLab also. Okay, so among these 1000 APIs, as per the requirement, client requirement, I want to change one API, small change. Okay, even though you are doing small change in one API, I need to host all these 1000 APIs code into the Git and then push it into the server. Okay, so that is one disadvantage. Next one is, whenever issue comes for single API, then remaining APIs also will not be worked. That is second disadvantage. Okay, next, searching will be difficult. I want to search the particular API method. You can able to search, but suppose if you have 10 APIs, searching will be faster and it will be clear to you compared to the 1000 APIs. Okay, so searching will be not easy whenever you have single API template or solution for 1000 APIs. Okay, next, development in the point of Git. Okay, similarly as per deployment. So here I want to change small logic into the API. Okay, so I need to push entire 1000 APIs code into the Git. Okay, so that is also another disadvantage. Next, debugging will be difficult. Okay, so see, 1000 APIs are there. If you put step-by-step debugging, then it will be somewhat difficult. Okay, compared to the 10 APIs. If you have so many APIs, somewhat debugging will be difficult. Okay, next, so these are the disadvantages. Okay, now come to these points. Why this common API, web API gateway, microservice are coming to the picture? So what is the purpose? First of all, deployment easy. Okay, see, so 10 screens are there. I want to split this 1000 APIs into 10 API solutions. Okay, see this. Not single API, 10 API solutions are there. Okay, templates you can call anyone. Okay, each and API solution has 100 APIs. Okay, so I want to change one API. Okay, or else you can microservice name like user roles and dashboard. Okay, dashboard like that. Okay, so these are called just like microservices. So user has 100 APIs. When we use microservice methodology, so if I want to change the logic in one API which exists in user microservice, then I can change that logic and then I can push the user microservice related code into the Git. Okay, so that after development, pushing the code into the Git, that will be easy. Okay. And so I don't want to change, I don't want to push the related codes of roles and dashboard. Why? Because we have split it into the different microservices, user, roles, dashboard. Okay. So when I want to change the logic in one API method which belongs to the user microservice, I can change the logic. I can push the Node API code into the Git. After that, push the code into the server. That's it. Okay. No need to touch the code of roles and dashboard services. Okay. So earlier I have to push the entire all APIs code into the Git. After that, all APIs code into the server. Okay. That is the older approach. Next. And deployment is also easy. Okay, so which microservice got changed, that microservice only we can deploy into the server. Whenever issue comes, suppose whenever issue comes into the user microservice, then that related microservices only will not work, except roles, dashboard, remaining microservices will be worked fine. Okay, and searching also easy. Why? Because we have less number of APIs, and debugging is also easy. And here this point, it is very important, development in the point of Git. Okay, see, one API solution, there it is. Yeah, see here 1000 APIs are there, so multiple persons works. Okay, so I mean, for example, 10 persons are working under this single API solution, older approach. Okay, so somebody, one screen, just like user 1 working for first screen, user 2 working for second screen. Okay, so after development of this user 1, he will push the code into the Git. Okay, and user 2 is also, after development of the user 2, he will also push the code into the Git. Okay, so for every time he has to take the pull and push the code into the Git. Okay, some merges will be come. Okay, so that's the major issue. Whenever multiple persons will work on the same API solution, some push and pull issues will come. Okay, so that merge, so somebody will face the merge conflict. Okay, such type of disturbances will come. Or else, see, 10 persons are there. If you have 10 microservices are there, each person, one person is dedicated to one microservice, or two persons will be dedicated to one microservices. Okay, they will communicate with each other, and or else they will take the pull before going to the push. Okay, somewhat merge conflict will not be come. So this is another advantage if you use common API, gateway, and microservices. Okay, so these are the benefits of this microservices and gateways common API. Okay, execution flow will not break. Okay, so quite reverse. These are the disadvantages of older approach. Single, if you have single API solution, these are the disadvantages. Quite reverse. Okay, so these are the advantages when we have this common API, gateway, and microservice. Okay, and so we have discussed web API, gateway, and microservice. Okay, so what is mean by common API? It will have only connection parameters, and one more thing is it will have one API method or function which will be used to get the connection parameters. Okay, so that is common API. So if you write logic, entire logic, so generally people will write entire logic in microservice, and validation part and calling that microservice will be available in API gateway, and DB connection string parameters and the function for getting that connection parameter will be exist in common API. Okay, so here once this code was developed, okay, at this point connection parameters, if you give different server credentials, I mean sorry, 1 minute. Yeah, see. So common API purpose is once the code was developed, web API gateway and microservice. Okay, here you can decide. So which type of, which server, which database, which IP address you have to give. Here you can decide in common API. Okay, so we have, for example, here DB credentials we have used MySQL and MongoDB. Okay, and for MySQL, if you have server IP address 100, 101, 102, okay, MongoDB 201, 202, 203. Okay, so in this connection parameters, if you want to connect 100, if you want to connect 100 server, you can give 100 server credentials, so that all these APIs will be worked for 100 server. If you give 101 server into the connection parameters, so all these APIs will be worked for 101 server. Like that MongoDB also. Okay, that means dynamic approach. Okay, so here at this connection parameters, if you change anything regarding to the connection parameters, then it will be applicable to all entire application. Okay, so that is the common API, and here observe these diagrams, then you come to know what is what. So first see this. In web API gateway 4000 means that is a port number. Okay, I have taken different port numbers for this, and in web API gateway we will use to write validations and calling the microservice, and in microservice we will take the connection parameters from the common API and write the connection string to the DB, okay, and write the logic in microservice. In common API, we will have only connection parameters and function for connection, getting the connection parameters. Okay, so these are the flow. First of all, see this. First, this arrow mark means we will make the request to the microservice, and we will get the response from the microservice. Okay, and here we will make a request for connection parameters, and we will get the response from the common API. And see this. So this is the actual flow diagram, and if you confuse this diagram, don't worry. Here I have included all the microservices request and response. Okay, this is the similar diagram, but here I have involved only one microservice. Okay, first of all, web application or mobile application, Okay, so client may enter anyone. So if the request comes from web application, see bidirectional arrow marks. Observe that is very important. If the client makes a request from the web application, so that request goes to the web API gateway, and from this request goes to the microservice. Okay, and from this microservice, here what will happen is it will get the connection parameters from common API, and then we used to write DB connection string related code based on the connection parameters. Okay, and then it will connect to the database and get the response from the database by using the logic, and then it will send that microservice, send that response to the web API gateway, and web API gateway takes that response and give it to the web application. Okay, so this is the flow. So I think this diagram will be clear. So if you understand this diagram, then this term becomes easy. See this. You can see this this diagram also. User interface, API gateway, different microservices, all the in each and every microservice, we used to write the DB connection string related code. Okay, for each and every microservice. Okay. See, this is one more example. See, these are the services. So front end application. So if the request comes, and that request will be transferred to services, microservices. These are the frequently used terminology: products, cart, checked out, search, authentication and users. These are the microservices name. Each and every microservice is connected to the database. Okay. This is about introduction.